Come this fall, if all goes as planned, electronic tolling will be in place on the Mass Turnpike as well as the Tobin Bridge and the harbor tunnels. 26 toll plazas along the pike will be replaced by 16 of these structures called Gantries. They're equipped with scanners to read E-ZPass devices and cameras to take pictures of license plates for cars that don't have those sensors. All this technology has raised concerns about privacy and pricing. Last week, the governor said there have to be changes in the pricing structure since there are fewer gantries than toll plazas.
So almost by definition, that's going to create a little bit of disruption. But our goal needs to be to figure out how to make sure that for most people, it doesn't change what they expected.
For example, a trip from Westboro to Weston will go up from 70 cents to 95 cents, but traveling from the New York border to Boston will go down from $6.60 to $6.15. Transportation officials maintain all the changes are generally revenue neutral and say the benefits will be tangible right away: reduced congestion, less pollution, and fewer accidents. The target date for implementation is October 28th, and there will be several hearings between now and then. Joining me to discuss the pros and cons of the system are Cade Crockford from the ACLU of Massachusetts and Peter Firth, professor of civil and environmental engineering at Northeastern University. Thank you both for being here.
Glad to.
Peter, let me start with you. From a big picture transportation policy point of view, is this new approach the state's going to take really going to be as beneficial as they're saying?
Sure. And states all over the country are going with open road tolling and cashless payment because, as you said, it means less delay. You get rid of the congestion, you get rid of the accidents that they induce. And it's also going to save the state a lot of money for in paying toll collectors.
What about the environmental benefit? That's another thing they're touting, right? Less idling, less exhaust going up into the atmosphere as people sit there in traffic?
Sure.
Yeah?
Sure. Although
you don't sound that excited.
I'm never excited about environmental benefits that come from reducing congestion, because if you make a trip that used to take 45 minutes take 40 minutes, guess what? People are going to move a little further out, and now they're going to still make that 45-minute trip. So, but the main benefits are saving money on the operation. You're not paying all those toll collectors, saving time, saving accidents.
So in terms of saving time, and I swear I'm going to get to you in 10 seconds,
Yeah.
I shouldn't expect that my commute is going to stay better if it gets 5 or 10 minutes better at first, right?
Well, that's...
All right, good rule of thumb.
No, your commute will get better until you decide, hey, I'm not spending enough time in my car. I'm going to move further away because I want a longer commute.
I don't think I'm going to do that anytime
Good.
soon. Okay, Cade Crockford, let's go to you. You've struck sort of a note of restrained concern when it comes to privacy issues, saying that they're legit, but that they can be dealt with in a fairly easy way. What do you mean by that?
Sure. This is not a complicated issue. I think oftentimes people misconstrue these kinds of issues and think, we should give all the information to law enforcement. But the police should know where everyone is at all times, and they should never have to get a warrant. Or on the other side, some people say, the sky is falling, the police are going to track us through these systems. It's really not that difficult to implement common sense privacy policy with this type of system that restricts internal access, requires that except in emergencies, law enforcement has to get a warrant to get information about where you've been driving, and then also imposes a reasonable retention period so that the information is not retained indefinitely, at least in a personally identifiable form. I can imagine that transportation researchers might want to keep the data for a longer period of time in a form that does not tie an individual to an individual trip. But it's really not rocket science. We just are looking forward to MassDOT implementing some internal policies that set these kinds of privacy policies out, as well as ideally the legislature looking at instituting this kind of practice in a statute.
I might be able to imagine what you're talking about, but I want to make sure I understand. When it comes to restricting internal access, what sort of measures would you like to see taken to make sure that that occurs?
Well, there are a couple things. First of all, the public should know who does have access to this information internally at MassDOT, as well as at the company TransCore that's actually processing this data. So that's another thing, right? I mean, we are saving some money by not paying toll workers, but there's a company called TransCore that has its own employees who we are paying as Massachusetts taxpayers to deal with this information and process. The tolls, communicate with the registries of motor vehicles in many different states about who owns which car, whatever. So we want to make sure that those folks can't just search, Tom Brady, Matt Damon, willy-nilly look to see where Adam Riley was driving. And additionally, there's a way to ensure that kind of stuff doesn't happen technologically, not just through policy, but Raytheon could implement or TransCore could implement a process that created an actual documentation every time a search was performed, and there would be a reason documented for that search. So really straightforward stuff. And lots of businesses that deal with large amounts of data already have these kinds of practices in place.
I don't think we've addressed the hot list yet, and that's the term that the state is using, right? The hot list that would
Right.
allow, for example, if there's an Amber Alert and a given automobile is suspected of conveying a kid who's been abducted, that they'd be able to then find where that individual is on the pike. Are you concerned about what they're talking about in terms of the hot list?
So we have a hundreds-year-old standard which works really great, and it is called the Fourth Amendment. And under the Fourth Amendment, law enforcement needs to get a warrant to obtain sensitive information about people, except in limited emergencies. And one of those emergencies is if someone's life is at risk. So certainly an Amber Alert would qualify. Again, these are not complicated issues. You know, we deal with these questions when we talk about cell phone location information. We've dealt with them in terms of license plate trackers that law enforcement has been using in Massachusetts for many years. So the policy answers are relatively straightforward. You know, getting those good policies implemented politically is the challenge.
I'll come to you in 1 second. Based on what you're hearing from the state so far, are they attuned to the concerns that you're raising and the solutions you're suggesting?
Well, they certainly seem to be aware that this is a subject of public concern. And so our hope is that, you know, in the next coming weeks, we plan on sending some materials over to MassDOT to suggest, you know, essentially in more detail, the kind of policy that I've been describing in the press. And, you know, we're hopeful that they'll adopt it. Sure.
Peter, you were moderately enthusiastic when we started talking about the potential benefits of this shift. Is there anything that you would have liked to see the state do when it comes to tolling? Big changes that would go far beyond what they've done that you think they missed an opportunity to do here?
No, right now there is a toll road. They need to collect tolls on the toll road. They're collecting tolls there. But the opportunity for the future is to use pricing as a much better way of managing the supply-demand mismatch rather than congestion. The way that mismatch appears now, so many people try to get on a road and you're stuck in traffic for half an hour.
Yeah, I do it every day going into the Ted Williams tunnel.
So when we take time out of your life, that is gone forever and you can't get it back. Whereas if I take money from somebody's pocket, that money doesn't disappear. It then can be used for some other beneficial purpose, like maintaining the roads.
So just briefly, how might that system work in the future if they were to move in the direction you're talking about?
So I think a lot of people have heard of London's congestion charge.
Yeah.
So New York City wanted to and was very close to being able to do a congestion charge. They still want to go to something in like that. And in Boston, we could have the same sort of thing. So what this open roll tolling and cashless system allows you to do is charge people for driving on congested roads without having to construct toll plazas, which is something that made it impossible except on expressly built toll roads.
Cade, from a civil liberties point of view, is that something that you could see? And I know we're being very hypothetical here. Could that work from your vantage point?
I mean, look, technology changes very rapidly, and with it, we have all sorts of new opportunities, right? And there are certainly drawbacks too. So, you know, any of these systems can be abused, even if there's good policy in place. But those are the kinds of decisions that we have to make in a democracy together. I don't think the ACLU is the only actor here. So certainly we would
put it on.
Yeah, no, but certainly we would push for, you know, policies and laws that would make sure that people's constitutional rights were protected along with those technological changes.
Cade Crockford, Peter Firth, thank you both.